Hi, I'm Obi-Wan. This is Red Share Reading. Tonight I'm reading the Black Book of Secrets, Chapter 12. Let's go. The Gravedigger's Confession. My name is Obadiah Strang, and I have a terrible secret. It haunts me every waking hour, and at night, when I finally manage to sleep, it takes over my dreams. I might only be a humble gravedigger, but I am proud of it. I have never cheated anyone. They get 6 feet, no more, no less. I have always led a simple life. I need very little, and I ask for nothing. I was a contented man, until some months ago when I fell afoul of my landlord, Jeremiah Ratchet. It had been a difficult week, short on grave digging and even shorter on tips. When rent day came around, I didn't have it. No doubt you already know of Jeremiah Ratchet. He is a hated man in these parts, and I feared what he would do to me. But he surprised me and suggested that I pay double the next week. Like a fool, I accepted his offer. But when rent day came, again he claimed that I owed him 18 shillings, not 12. 6 shillings interest on the loan, he explained with an oily smile. Of course, I didn't have the extra money, and a week later, the debt had increased again. I paid what I could and tried to reason with him, but Jeremiah Ratchet must have a hole where his heart should be. After 4 weeks, I owed so much I could never hope to pay. That was his intention all along. I have a suggestion, he said the next time he came over. A way for you to work off your debt. Although I distrusted the man by now, I had no choice but to listen. I need you to do a job for me, something eminently suited to your skills. I will provide the tools. Then he explained to me his despicable plan, and I flew into a rage and threw him out. He stood on the path and called back to me, "If you will not do it, then I will evict you. You know where I am if you change your mind. I'll give you a week to think it over." That night I cursed myself again and again for getting myself into debt to the monster. By the time the sun rose, I knew that I had no choice. I sent for Ratchet, and he came to the cottage to explain what I had to do. He handed me my only tool, a wooden spade. "Quieter than a metal one," said Jeremiah. "Anyone in this business knows that. And what a business, the business of body snatching." That night, some time after 1, I went to the churchyard with a heavy heart. How I hated myself for what I was about to do. I knew the grave in question. Hadn't I dug it myself the previous day and watched the coffin lowered into it that very afternoon? And now I was digging it up again. With every spadeful of dirt, I thought of that scoundrel, Ratchet. His wealth was made off the backs of the poor. He must have half the village in his debt. It was raining now, and the moon hid herself behind the clouds, ashamed to witness what I was doing. The wind whipped around my head. Water streamed off my hat. The cold froze my hands. The dark clay was sticky with water. It took a supreme effort to raise the shovel. It released only a loud sucking noise, as if the earth herself had come alive and was trying to pull it, and me with it, into the bowels of hell below. As the earth piled up on the side, my sweat mingled with the driving rain. In my chest, my heart pounded. Like a blacksmith's hammer, at last I hit wood. I dropped to my knees and scraped the coffin clean with my hands. The lid was held down by a single nail at each corner. I forced the edge of the spade underneath and began to lever it up. The wood splintered and cracked and split. "Sweet Lord, forgive me," I muttered and crossed myself. as a bolt of lightning ripped the sky apart. In its fiery light I gazed down upon the poor soul within. He wasn't a rich man. I could tell from the quality of the finish on the box and the cheap fittings. But who was in these parts? But who was in these parts? Rich or poor, like us all, he ended up in the dirt. He was young, though, and his handsome face was unmarked by the accident that had killed him. He had fallen under the wheels of a cart. His pale hands were laid across his chest, and his ashen face was peaceful. His earthly worries were over. Mine had just begun. I hesitated only a second, then took the poor chap by the shoulders and dragged him out of the coffin and up onto the side of the grave. I looked up at the heavens, and I swore that this was the first and last time I would do this. I thought that the soul gone, a body would be lighter, relieved of the burden of life. But I felt as if I were lifting a dead horse. I dragged him across the grass, between the headstones to the church gates, where Jeremiah had said there would be someone waiting. I saw them, 2 men dressed in black, their faces and heads hidden beneath hoods. Without a word they took the body and threw it onto the back of their cart, between barrels of ale. They covered it with straw and then took off. I waited until I could no longer hear the horse's hooves before returning to fill in the grave. I worked like a man possessed, shoveling with the energy of a demon, and when it was finally done, I went home. I woke the next day convinced I had dreamed it all, but there by the fireplace was the wooden shovel. I could hardly bear to look upon myself in the mirror. Whatever my reason for doing it, I was still no better than a common body snatcher, resurrectionists. They like to call themselves, but to give a person a fancy name don't change his nature. Doubtless the corpse was now far away, likely as not, in the city, under the knife of a surgeon, in the anatomy school, and all the interest of science. At least that's what the doctors said. They paid good money for bodies, and Jeremiah was lining his pockets with it, but never had I thought I would be involved in such a grisly, sinful business. Jeremiah came knocking that night. "My men say you did a good job." It was not a compliment I wished to accept. "And where are the valuables?" he asked me. "Valuables? What are you talking about, man? Isn't it enough that I unburied a body for you? Now you want more?" He shrugged. "I have it on good authority that young man was buried with a silver timepiece and a gold ring. Belonged to his father. Strange custom to bury what could be sold for cash." I could hardly believe that I was hearing what I was hearing. Ratchet wanted me to be a thief for him, as well as a body snatcher. "I did what you asked. The debt is paid." He shook his head. "I think not, Mr. Strang. After all, you owe quite a considerable sum, and you haven't collected the valuables. Next time, you will have to be more careful." "Next time?" I didn't dare to argue any more, for then I saw what a fix I was in. The penalty for grave robbing was prison, at the very least. But only if you were lucky enough to survive the lynching by the dead man's relatives. That was over 6 months ago, and Jeremiah has called on me again and again to do his dirty work. I don't like to think how many bodies I have unearthed. All I know is if I am caught, Jeremiah will not be the one to suffer. That man enjoys the fruits of my wickedness, and I can do nothing about it. I lie awake until the small hours, tortured by my actions. I am betraying the trust of the villagers, a trust I have built up all my life. If they knew, they would string me up as they got hold of me. Jeremiah Ratchet. How I detest that man. If I thought I could get away with it, I'd take a swing at his big, fat head with my shovel. Oh, if this is interesting to you, please be sure to hit the like button for me. It will help the video spread to other people. Thank you very much. Ludlow hesitated at that last sentence. He had been instructed to write everything he heard, so he did. He stole a look at Obadiah, who was as ashen-faced as the very corpses he unearthed. Then he put down his quill, laid a sheet of blotting paper between the pages, and closed the book. Obadiah sat back in the chair, exhausted, and covered his face with his hands. "You've got to help me, Mr. Zabadow. I'm a broken man, unworthy of life." Joe laid his hand firmly on Obadiah's knee. "Rid yourself of those murderous thoughts," he said. "They will only eat at your soul. There is a natural justice in this world. Perhaps it is not as swift as we would like. But believe me, Jeremiah Ratchet will feel its force. Now, go home and you will sleep, and you will not dream." Obadiah sighed deeply. "You know, Mr. Zabadow, I believe you might be right." He stood up to go, but Joe held him back. "Your payment, as agreed." Joe handed him a leather bag of coins, and Obadiah's eyes widened when he felt its weight. "Oh, I'm most grateful to you, Mr. Zabadow," said Obadiah. "I can make good use of this." "And so you should," replied Joe, shaking his hand warmly. "You should." "And what of Jeremiah?" he ventured nervously. Joe merely blinked once slowly. "Be patient, Mr. Strang. Be patient." Well, that's the end of chapter 12. So thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time in chapter 13. Bye.